All right, guys, the fall major Swiss has concluded, which means we got to do bracket predictions. We got to do it for the bracket stage. I don't know. I had to scroll down. I had to think about it for a second. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Swiss in general. I think all in all, NA showed back up. Again, OC, sure, they didn't make it out of the top 8, but they had a fantastic run where they got 2 9th place finishes. That puts them in a pretty good spot to try and nab at least one of those top 8 spots going forward in the winter major and then going forward in the spring major. And once again, if your region finishes in points in the top 8, well, you get an extra world championship spot. So right now, 4 European teams, so 7 world championship teams, if they keep up that pace, are in the top 8, so 4 of them. 3 for NA, so 6 spots for them at the world championship, again, if they keep up this pace. And then Middle East, they got the other spot. Well, MENA, technically, Middle East, North Africa, but we know this is Sandrock's region. So if they keep up the pace of staying in top 8, well, they will unlock 1 additional spot there, so they'll have 3 teams going to the World Championship. So the entire Middle East region definitely rooting for Sandrock over NRG to get up even more of those points. Let's zoom in a little bit, I guess, because we probably don't need to look too hard at this Swiss, but we will here or there. So let's go Dignitas versus Semper. This is one of those series. Could go either way. Wasn't that just a regional 3 match, or am I completely misremembering? I didn't work that day, but I still watched it, but it's like a haze at times. So let's just take a look. I want to see what the match score was because I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh no, I'm sorry, they played Endpoint. My apologies. So Semper, though, obviously in Regional 3, we're grand finalists with Endpoint. Both of those teams are obviously in this bracket. All 4 of these top 4 teams are in this bracket, so we'll see how that all plays out. But my apologies, I thought Dig was like, I was like, did they play Semper? I'm like, I don't remember it, but had to check anyway. So Dig versus them. They have not played in Swiss either. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They did play in Swiss. Man, I'm just all over the board. I forgot. They 3-0'd them, but at the time, it was looking pretty good for Semper. They were pretty competitive in that matchup, but Dignitas obviously putting up a ton of goals, and that's a problem. This 5-2 was the only one that wasn't close. 2 overtimes as well, but Dignitas putting up nearly 4 goals per game, and the all-time record at an RLCS LAN, which is only World Championships, was Flipside Tactics Season 1, 2.85. So if they can keep up that pace, they will shatter these offensive records going on right now. But playing a Semper team that obviously it took a little while for them to get there. Dignitas had the day off. Will that play a factor? I don't think it will. I think Dignitas wins that. I think it'll be a little closer, a little more competitive. We'll go 4-2 because we want long games on day number 4. Moving on. So the top side of this bracket is completely stacked with European teams and South American teams, obviously, with complexity coming on here. I know on Twitter I've been trolling everyone, calling complexity South American team. They probably think they're a South American team, and they have every right to do so, but technically speaking, they're a North American team, so we'll call them North American from here on out. But I love when people get very angry on Twitter about it. So, complexity versus BDS, another rematch. What was that? Round 1, I believe. There it is. In that game, BDS barely won. Complexity up 3-1. Then a 1-goal game, 1-goal game, 1-goal game, 1-goal game across the board. So even in goals throughout. The 2 overtimes went to BDS. Incredibly close set. I think BDS played better later on. So that could play a factor. But Complexity also did too. They also came out pretty strong. And I think that is probably, out of all the teams of where they are, Complexity is probably that one team where I'm like, wow, I can't believe they actually were playing that well. They take out Team Envy, a team that historically they haven't done fantastic against. Take out a European team. They almost beat BDS. Complexity's been looking good. They've been looking good versus BDS, but if you saw my predictions earlier in the week, I had Dignitas versus BDS in the grand finals. I sadly cannot have that now, but I'm still going to have BDS moving forward there. I think BDS will find a way to take down Complexity. So it'll be 2 EU teams in the top 4. Moving on to the other side, FaZe Clan versus Endpoint. FaZe and Illusion especially has been playing fantastic. First Killer and AJ are not playing bad either, obviously. Like, they're doing their thing. There's no land jitters coming out of FaZe. Endpoint, I think it took them a little while to warm up. That was a really bad loss in round 1. And that kind of spiraled this whole entire Swiss, like, out of context. Like, everything went haywire because of that Renegades win versus Endpoint. So Endpoint is the one to blame for all of this bracket. So we'll just blame them. But Endpoint, they're looking a lot better. They take down a strong G2 who was coming off some pretty hot wins versus Envy at the very least. But FaZe, it's hard to go against a 3-0. And again, in North American history, in Swiss, a 3-0 team in the bracket stage in that quarterfinals has never lost to a 3-2 team. In Europe, it happens all the time. And Endpoint's been one of those teams that when they do finish 3-2, they take down a 3-0 team. They did it twice. That was back when it wasn't even on this roster. So it's possible. I really don't want to go this EU heavy, but I'm contemplating it, but I'm going to go FaZe Clan here. We'll pick FaZe Clan just so we can get a nice NA versus EU final, because I think that's what everyone wants at the end of the day, which also means SRG, sorry, Sandrock. I know you had a fantastic run. It all started versus G2. They look great. Playing with a sub, and they're still looking this good. I can't wait to see Khaled, hopefully at the Winter Major. But G2, they easily beat them. Then they lost to an EU team, SRG. Then they battled back and beat a South American team and then an OCE team. And that's where I'm not sold on SRG yet. I get it. They played a G2. They dominated a G2. Or maybe not dominated, but they did beat them 3-0. And maybe that there was some nerves in round 1. And I feel like round 1 wins and losses are probably the least important out of all these matches. Just because of, like, that's the first game. Everyone's a little bit nervous. We might see some more wild matches there. But, like, you can't take it away from me. Like, SRG, they deserve this 3 seed. Maybe they got a little bit of a beneficial bracket towards the end of this thing. But they are the 3 seed. You got to respect them. The problem is, this is the worst team you want out of these 3-2 teams. It was very important for these 3-2 teams. Whoever had the highest game differential would play SRG, and I think out of all the teams that were in that range, you would want to play them compared to a Dignitas or a FaZe at 3-0. So, Energy comes in. Energy looks amazing. We saw it today, round 4, 3-0, perfect sweep on Vitality. Sure, Vitality's not playing their best. It's still a perfect sweep. Tokyo Verde was in this tournament. They did not get perfect swept. Energy did what no other team has ever done in Rlcs land, and they got a perfect sweep. And then they come out against Ground Zero, and it wasn't even close, guys. It wasn't even close. Game 2, sure, 1-goal game. But, like, Energy looks like they have found what they need to find. It took them 3 days. They're very happy it's a 5-day event now. I have to go Energy here. I think they are heavy, heavy favorites in this match versus Sandrock. I get it. I like everything I see out of Sandrock. But we haven't seen them compete against the very best of NA or EU yet, where they win. They played against a G2 that looked like a little sloppy in round 1, maybe nerves. But after that, they got some beneficial matches. So I think it'll cost them in the end. It's not their fault. They play whoever they play, and they did what they did. But I think they're playing Energy, and I have to go Energy there. So that leaves Dignitas versus BDS and Energy versus FaZe. So, it's going to be tough, but that means we have a guaranteed EU versus NA final, which is what everyone wants, unless you want SRG in the finals, which is perfectly acceptable too. I think that story would be fantastic. But Dignitas versus BDS, just how Dignitas is playing right now, like Dignitas, sure, schedule wasn't the hardest in their first 2 matches, maybe, with a weak Envy and Tokyo Verde, but Dignitas looks like on another level. BDS could turn it up. I would not be. I have BDS winning this entire tournament in my predictions last week, but I think I have to swap based on what I've seen out of Dig. Dig looks perfect. Like, Jorius, best player in the world, easy right now. Scrub Killer, flawless. Apparently Jack looking great as well. All 3 are the top goal scorers in this entire tournament so far. They are just dominating right now. gotta go Dignitas. I get it. Like, it's very hard to not pick them when they have a 9-0 Swiss, right? So I'm going to go Dignitas there. I'm going to go against my BDS pick and take Dignitas to a grand finals. I did have Dig in the grand final, so I'll give myself a little pat on the back there, as long as they make it, which who knows in this bracket. Literally any of these teams have a really, really good shot at winning this tournament. But I will go Dignitas. Moving on, we have FaZe versus NRG, and we'll look at FaZe's run here. Playing Vitality, a very weak Vitality, so pretty weak there. Playing Renegades, who obviously came off beating Endpoint, but I still think, not the hottest team in the world. But then they also took out BDS, so that's a solid showing. It's always a solid showing when you get to a 2-0 round, whoever you play. So they beat BDS. On the other side, NRG, it was shaky. And honestly, when we look at this board, and sure, they look dominant, but the more you look at it, they beat a team that came in last in Era. They beat a Vitality who only didn't come in last because they played Era. And then they beat a Ground Zero, who Ground Zero only beat APAC and an OCE team at the end of the day. And sure, that's just how it plays out. You play who you play. And again, NRG, they look absolutely amazing. So maybe going back to my SRG pick, I am questioning heavy favorites. I'll say they're favorites. Because now that I'm looking at this more, like NRG, sure, they look great. They look great against teams that are not doing too well or that were not expected to be top 8. But when they play against top 8 teams like BDS and Endpoint, they don't look as strong. So it's iffy. So I feel like FaZe is playing higher than they were supposed to, and NRG is obviously playing lower. And usually throughout a tournament, that kind of will change from day to day. And I think eventually you would think NRG would play up to their level, and FaZe might come down a little bit, because Illusion can't play like a god the entire tournament. I just don't think it's going to happen. He'll have a bad series here or there, or at least a mediocre series. I think I'm going NRG. I think I am. I know it seems like it's the convenient pick, like NRG. They always do it, but that's the thing. They always do it. When they show up at these LANs, sure, in the early beginnings of Garrett G's career, they weren't clutch on LAN, but they always finish top 4, and they always do well. In the past 3 years, I guess. I'm not even sure. Someone go check, because I don't have all the tournament results on me. But to my knowledge, NRG is always top 4 or in the run-in to win it. And I think when they came into this tournament, before we saw anything, they were the favorites to win this tournament. Not by much, but I would say, if I was a betting man and I had to bet $1,000 on someone to win and win $1,000, I think you pick NRG. Just because maybe NA, I think, is less competitive. So NRG is more of the lead team there, compared to an EU, where in the EU it's sure, you might like Dig, but also what about Endpoint, or what about BDS, So I think I'm going to go NRG. So I would get the Dignitas NRG finals, and then I think I have to go Dig, just based on how they're playing. NRG again looks pretty strong, but again against weaker opponents, I would say. And Dignitas, we'll have to see how they're tested, obviously. But if they do get through to European powerhouse teams, I think there's no stopping them at that point. Again, I said it at the beginning of my predictions about my regional biases and all of that I thought Europe was the better region than NA. And if I went against that in this final, I think I'd be crazy. So I'm going to go Dignitas taking down NRG. It's going to be a fun show, no matter what. Speaking of that, I just want to point out, World Championship teams, I think I already went over that. Very, very important, because if, obviously Dignitas wins, that's the number 1 EU seed getting so many points. They'll basically be locked in for a top 8, which they very likely are anyway, North America number 1 as well, just because they have so many teams there. But the other things I want to talk about through Swiss, I think there was something I wanted to mention. I can't think of it right now, but there was a lot of good gameplay going on. Again, OC, I think, should hold their heads pretty high. Sam is the one disappointment, I would say, that I think a lot of people were expecting them to do better. Furia has been having great scrim results, even in the Rlcs skirmish as well. And then to not show up when it matters most, that's a problem for South America. We've seen that in the 3 RLCS lands we've had. So that's something they have to get over. It is a huge hurdle for sure. But again, like OC should be pretty proud of what they accomplished here. Again, head-to-head, Renegades over Sam, or OC over Sam here. Yet again, that happened. And obviously, like, OC got a little bit of a good run, but that's because of an OC number 2 seed taking out an EU number 1, right? In round 1 to make all these brackets crazy. So, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. 4 Europe teams left, 2 NA, 1 South America, 1 Middle East. It's going to be a good time. I think literally any of these teams could win. I think if I had to rank them of, like, power rankings, not my predictions, I would probably say Dignitas is 1. I guess FaZe barely 2. I think I would put Energy 3, though. Just because I think Dig is so far ahead, it's going to make the other teams on this side relatively weaker. Probably Energy 3, which is basically their seeds right now we're going through. But I would say BDS is 4. I think 5 would be Endpoint to win this whole thing. 6 would be Semper. Yeah, I would say that. 7 Sandrock, 8 Complexity is what I am thinking based on, like, who I think could actually win 3 of these back to back to back. I don't think Complexity's got it, but they are obviously having a good Swiss, and SRG obviously having a good Swiss too. But I don't think it's their time yet. And I think the other guys have shown more of, like, that they can run through a bracket before. So, but hey, I'm probably wrong. And that's what's great about it. That's why we're just doing predictions here. We're just having some fun with it. I like to troll all the NA fans on Twitter. Because, you know, NA's got a lot of egos, man. All I see in predictions, and maybe it's because, like, they all speak English, so I see them more compared to maybe the EU predictions. But so many people in NA had an all-NA final. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Where's the evidence that NA is this good? I don't see it at all. But it is what it is. We have a good time about the region rivalries. So, hey, we'll see what happens. NA can still take it. Right now, EU's 1 Swiss. NA could win the bracket. Middle East could win the bracket. I guess technically Middle East won Swiss because they have the best win percentage, 75% win percentage. So Middle East wins Swiss. We'll see who wins bracket. It's been a lot of fun. The guys are killing it on the desk. Gregan is an absolute machine. He comes out of nowhere, hasn't casted in 2 years plus, and he's like, yeah, sure. I'll come on to a major and just run the desk way better than I ever could. He's been amazing. Wavepunk hosting, fantastic. He rarely hosts Rocket League events. Obviously, he hosts a lot of Twitch rivals. Doing a fantastic job. And then all the casters, except for Cole, because he's a little short. But everyone else is doing a fantastic job. Go support them all. Go watch the show. And go at them on Twitter and compliment them. Because I bet they're looking at Twitter here or there, just seeing what's going on. And a compliment will just make them feel special. And maybe you'll get an even better cast out of it. So when you see them about to cast or just before the day starts, why don't you go on their Twitters of all the casters, just at one at a time, and compliment them about something. And I bet they will feel great, and it'll be an even better show. So go do that for me. We'll see you next year, I guess, because at this point we're done. We're done after this bracket. We'll probably do some other video, I guess. But that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.